I mean, it started way back in high school. I had hobbies that, frankly, just grew into businesses. So I had trading cards like every kid. I had a weird one where I was keeping snakes, and both of those hobbies ended up just evolving into where I had way too many trading cards. I would go to card expositions around the country, just selling them. And then actually I started building a website for each of those businesses, and then customers of those businesses noticed the website, asked me to build a website that turned into a web design company, and then web design skills turned into a website that I started, kind of like a half.com for gift cards, and then using those skills ended up creating an Invite, which we just sold. So it was a progression where each business kind of built upon the former one. It all started, I mean, the first businesses started just because I think we had a very entrepreneurial home. I mean, my dad was an entrepreneur. My mom was as well, and it was very fostered around just doing things your own way. When I started going into high school and then started going into college, the biggest thing that I learned was finding the right co-founders. I mean, I had, in all of the businesses except the trading cards, a co-founder. Invite was successful because of the co-founder group. So I'm a strong believer in that you can't do everything yourself. There are examples of that where it's a one-man show, but for the most part, especially when you're young, you don't know everything. So finding someone who is technical if you're not, finding someone who knows sales if you're not, finding someone who knows a particular industry or knows people like investors and you don't, that's pretty important. So that really helped the progression, I'd say. Yeah, I mean, the key as a parent, I think, at least in my case, was not to force someone into some sort of usual path, right? I had a lot of friends their parents were very set on, okay, you're going to be a lawyer or a doctor or a consultant or a banker. And it was one of those four options, and that was the path they were going on. And it was treated as a disappointment if they didn't get an internship or, transgressed off that path towards one of those four things. In our case, it was very much of, I was starting my own company junior year of high school instead of getting an internship. That wasn't looked at as odd, right? That was important. Had there been that pressure to get a, band camp internship or whatever it is that you do in high school, it would have been different, and I probably wouldn't have been doing what I am today. So I think it's very important to just encourage, entrepreneurship takes its own course. It's not standard, right? It could be weird. You could be raising snakes in a garage like I was, which I was, and so you have those paths, and you need to be encouraging of it. Yeah, and we started all those companies hoping they would be, huge, and some of them got big enough. I mean, I was able to buy a nice watch and buy a car. Those were the moments. I was able to buy a car and buy a watch. The watch was the one. We sold the first company. We made enough to, finally, we had 3x our money. It wasn't a lot of money, but as a 16-year-old or 17-year-old, it was enough where I didn't have to get an internship. So the watch was the one. That was the moment. We sold our first. I had a co-founder. We sold our company for enough money to actually afford something that we couldn't have before, and that was really it. When we started them, we all had grand visions that they would be huge, but not until Invite. I mean, again, it was the co-founder group. I think prior to that, I was in high school or in first part of college. We chose the wrong markets. We didn't have enough money to go out and sell. The idea wasn't executed perfectly. We didn't know the tech well enough. I mean, there are all these reasons. So Invite was the one that finally led up to. Invite actually started completely different. We started as a video ad network in a way. The idea was we saw YouTube. We met the founders of YouTube before they launched, and they had this idea to build this massive video destination site. So we saw this video inventory out there, all these people watching videos, and we thought, well, there's no advertising against it. A company I'd worked at called Video Egg, actually through an introduction at Wharton, had 500 million video views a day or something like that weren't being or a month that weren't being monetized. So they had all these, it was $500,000 in server costs just to serve these videos. So there wasn't a way to get advertisers on. So the first idea for Invite, the name Invite actually comes from, we wanted to build an ad unit that popped up, kind of like when you're watching basketball on TNT and you see the new TV show, trailer pop up in the bottom left corner of the screen. That's what we called an invite. It was inviting you to watch something, inviting you to do something. So our first idea was actually this invite ad unit on top of video inventory. And the idea, frankly, was awful because this was 4 years ago. 4 years ago, advertisers didn't know how to value video inventory. They didn't have creative units for it. And so we kept pivoting the idea. So the next idea was built around Facebook applications. Facebook platform launched. Then the next idea was based off of ad exchanges, which is what we're doing today. And then we morphed that into an agency-focused model where we were selling to ad agencies. So all in all, it took about a year and a half from, okay, we have an idea, we're going to get started working, to, all right, we have an idea that's going to work, let's hire people and build upon it. And our investors were very nervous during that year and a half. It's the idea du jour, as one of our investors called it. Having a business in school was really hard at first. We started at junior year, but we learned how, actually ended up making better grades depending on what semester we're referring to, when you had more on your plate because you focus your time. So the schoolwork actually, it was hard at first, ended up getting easier. One of the biggest challenges was actually physical location. You know, our customers were in New York, and we were going to school in Philly. There was actually great talent in Philly. We still, to this day, have 15 people or so here that are focused on the engineering side that we were able to hire out of places like Penn and Drexel. And in New York, it's much harder. So we were able to do that. But early on, you know, we were in school here. We had to have meetings literally every day in New York. Investors were in New York as well, other than first round. So, you know, that travel, I mean, we were traveling every night at midnight, getting there at 1:30 to 2 a.m., right? Taking meetings starting at 8 a.m. and still having to manage midterms and finals and all that stuff. So that was tough. When we finished, I mean, it was pretty much the same challenge as any business has. It's recruiting well. We had problems recruiting early on when we were 21 years old and trying to hire a VP of finance and a VP of sales. But again, applying the same as before, as long as you know your stuff, age shouldn't matter. If someone treats age as a hindrance, it's probably the wrong person, frankly. So, you know, it was hiring well. We really had to manage, you know, not hiring, like a lot of investors and advisors told us to hire people older who knew this stuff, but we weren't convinced. We wanted to hire younger, hungrier people that were very ambitious, who hadn't done this before, needed a win. We did have a fire at our office. My co-founder was mugged at gunpoint outside of my apartment one summer. We had a lot of funny stuff like that, but at the end of the day, it was, I think, pretty similar to what most companies go through. We didn't have a perfect exit plan. We had offers to sell along the way for lower prices, frankly. I mean, we had numerous chances. I mean, we were building a company that was very valuable, and we knew that, but we didn't know how valuable yet. And Google, we had always, actually since day one, pretty much, we hadn't really talked to them. We were a buyer of some of their inventory. They were a supplier of ours. And we knew from day one they would be a great fit. They own DoubleClick. DoubleClick is a great, and I hate the word, there's so much synergy between DoubleClick and Invite, right? And so we knew that since day one, and we always looked at it, and there are other companies, Google wasn't the only one. That was one reason we were excited about the idea, is that there wasn't a lack of companies that would want our technology or that it made sense for. So Google made a lot of sense, and we kind of knew that since day one. We were always hoping they would. We were a little worried, frankly, they wouldn't be interested because maybe we were too expensive, maybe we were too young, you know, we didn't really know. So, you know, the 6 to 9 months leading up to it, it was the flirting stage with Google and other companies. We were getting to know them. It was very much a dual process. We had to convince them we were the right company to buy, but we needed to be convincing that they were going to invest in us, going to put us in the right path to accelerate the business. And, you know, more and more they came out on top in all those things. But it was really stressful because when you're raising money, when you're selling your business, it's almost a full-time job just to do those things. And it was still just Zach and I and our two co-founders, Scott and Michael, running the company. We had very few senior employees who were managers. We ended up getting that and fixing that and now have some great people. But at the time, it was a very small group still. And we were managing, I think we had six teams and 4 managers was the joke. And we had people wearing 2 hats. So we had this problem for about 6 months leading up to the sale where we were working harder than ever just because we had to keep the business growing, but then we also had to watch out for our shareholders and make sure we actually saw the deal through. So it was pretty stressful. We didn't think the deal would fall through. It was more of should we do it or should we not. We had multiple companies interested, so we knew we had something valuable. It wasn't like we were, you know, selling a straw house to someone, right? It was very we were confident in our position, we would waver a lot. And I think that's just because of Zach and I's, we hadn't been through it before. And so we were, I was yes, he was no, literally flip-flopping every day for 6 months. Should we do it? Should we not? And it wasn't about, it was all about, should we, is this the right time, right? Do we have a bigger opportunity if we wait? What happens if we don't? Does Google buy someone else? Does whoever else was interested buy someone else? The chess moves. And one of the big reasons we chose Google actually is they decided to keep us pretty much independent. We're still our own legal entity. Day to day, Zach and I and our core group of key employees still run the company day to day. That hasn't changed. So from a day to day perspective, I went from actually having less time to more time doing the same thing. So I no longer have to worry about things like board management. I'm not the CEO anymore. Eric Schmidt is. So I don't have to worry about fundraising. Google has a lot of money. Right? I don't have to worry about a lot of things, frankly, that as a startup founder, you have to. You have to pick your right student groups. You have to pick the right classes. And I made the mistake of thinking I wanted to pick my concentration too early on at Penn. So I started doing finance classes a little too early, just thinking that was what people do. But the reality is there's groups of people here that do everything. There's entrepreneurs, there's finance people, there's consultants. I mean, you have these core groups, and I made sure to focus my efforts outside of school with the crowd of people that I thought would ended up being true, would do what I wanted to do, which was startups. So early on, freshman year, you get a lot of on-campus recruiting. You just have to stay true to what you want to do. The good news is you don't get forced into anything. You have 4 summers when you're here, or one in between high school and college. I highly recommend. This is what I did. I had a VC internship freshman year. I had a startup internship sophomore year. I knew that's what I wanted to do then. Started a company junior year. All right, that was the trend. You have summers, you can use them. I had friends that got a banking job internship freshman year, right? And so they got it out of the way very early, and that guy ended up being a consultant. He figured out freshman year after working there. You're not going to figure it out in the classes. You will to a degree, right? But finance could seem like the greatest thing in the world, or entrepreneurship even, in class. And then you do it in real life, and you realize it's either not what you expected it to be, or it's boring, or whatever it is. So from I just recommend getting out there and working. And you have 3 months internship where it doesn't look weird that you have a job, right? When you graduate and you get in a routine and you get a full-time job offer and a salary, it's very hard to go back and say, well, I want to switch careers. It's very possible, and people do it all the time, but it's harder. Once you start having a family or whatever it is, it's much harder to just on a dime switch. And so when you're in college, you have the luxury that you wouldn't necessarily have otherwise. Take some internships, right? There are people here that can get you an internship anywhere you want, right? VC firms are great because you can it's the closest thing to startups with still being finance. And VC firms have portfolio companies, and portfolio companies can be anything, biotech. You can have your choice of the litter. And so, that's what I parlayed. I did a VC firm and then parlayed that into an internship at one of the portfolio companies. So, or you could go back to the VC firm, right, if you did a good job. So just definitely take some risks and get some job opportunities. I've met too many entrepreneurs who wannabe entrepreneurs who don't go to school. They either skip college, or they graduate, or they fail to graduate college. And it's very important I'm not just saying this because you guys are paying me, but even though you're not, it's very important to finish. There's only so many Mark Zuckerbergs who can quit college and be a billionaire, right, for having done that. And it looks like expected values in your favor, but it's actually not. There's 999 other entrepreneurs who either left school and now are regretting it. It's very hard to go back, right? It becomes easy to not go back. It's very important to get that degree. It means so much once you're out.